Macro, it's a term used to highlight the bigger picture. Did you know that you could apply macro to your body and how it metabolizes food? Well, our next guest will show us that we could probably be eating more if we only knew how our bodies respond to different foods. Well, let's welcome Christine Hronec. She is the founder of Gauge Life Fitness, a 3-time champion fitness competitor and author of Unlock Your Macro Type. Great to have you.
Thank you so much for having me today. It's a pleasure to be here.
How does this theory work?
So macros is short for the term macronutrients, and all food is made up of macronutrients. So it makes up the caloric content of food. Food is either a protein, a carbohydrate, or a fat. And in my book, Unlock Your Macro Type, what I do is I describe to people the best way to fuel your body. And knowing what your macro type is going to help you figure that out. So specifically, some people do better when they're more fat fueled. Other folks do better when they're more protein fueled. And then others even do better when they're more carbohydrate fueled. So it's really important for people to understand the best way to go about fueling your body, because the era of one size fits most diets, it just doesn't work. And we really need to focus on bio-individuality.
So how do you go about finding out what your macro type is? You know, you could eat a bunch of carbs, find out that you don't process them very well, eat a bunch of fats, you don't process it very well. So how do you know what is best for you?
So the first thing I need to do is I need to identify your carb tolerance level. And I have an in-depth carb tolerance assessment where I gauge your responsiveness to a variety of factors that I utilize when I'm screening my one-on-one coaching clients. So your carb tolerance it's a range. There's folks on one end who are type 2 diabetic where they have very low carb tolerance. There's folks on the other end who are hard gainers, very active individuals who can eat and eat and eat, and they are fine with very high carbs. It's identifying where you are in that range. And in this book, there's self-assessment tools to figure out your carb tolerance level, utilizing that information to figure out your macro type, which there's an in-depth self-assessment quiz.
Does this require going to get a blood test or learn more about your genetics or anything like that?
For this test, it is not required. So there's a lot of things that I can ask that are pretty intuitive that you can figure out and based off of like very common signals. And a perfect example is waist to hip ratio. That's something that you could just take a measuring tape, figure that out. But actually the World Health Organization uses that value as a gauge of visceral fat, which tells us a lot about how your body's going to respond to different nutrients.
Interesting. Now, this goes contrary to popular opinion that you need to eat more calories, consume more calories to lose weight.
Yes, it is counterintuitive because a lot of people think that they're trying to lose body fat. This is actually a model of what 5 pounds of body fat looks like. They think the key is eating less, working out more. But the reality is fat loss is a biochemical oxidation reaction. And in order for that to happen, you're going to need to be fueling your body with the appropriate nutrients so that way your body taps into this as a fuel source, because otherwise you could be losing muscle, you could be losing water, and not ultimately ending up with the body composition that you are looking for.
Well, one of the things that people do tend to do is they immediately eliminate carbs. Carbs have become the enemy, public enemy number one. So how does that lend to cutting it completely out of your diet and then by gaining weight as a result?
Yes, it's interesting because carbohydrates, again, there are going to be some people who would benefit from that, people who are the fat-fueled macro type. However, there are a lot of people who actually need that to boost their metabolism because muscle is the result of protein plus carbohydrates. So if you're trying to gain lean muscle mass to support the oxidation of fat loss, a moderate amount of carbohydrates is going to be beneficial for a large portion of individuals.
So interesting. What is the essential macronutrient that most people don't get enough of each day?
Protein. I would scream it from the rooftops if I could. According to the USDA, the Nutrition Facts panel say we only need 10% of our total daily caloric intake from protein, but the reality is that's just the minimum amount we need for DNA resynthesis. It has nothing to do with muscle, that has nothing to do with health, fitness-oriented goals, and in my professional opinion, it is substantially too low. And in my book, I cite lots of validated research studies where they show the benefit of going higher in protein and its impact on the body.
Well, you certainly know what you're talking about. You're an award-winning chemical engineer. You're an expert in nutrition and in exercise. People need to check out your book, Unlock Your Macro Type. I want to thank you so much for joining us, Christine.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
We're back in 2 minutes.